Let's talk about games, specifically video games. Video games, computer games, console games, whatever. They have changed a lot over the years. The first one I ever played was Pong. Back then you got a machine and it had one game it could play. In this case, Pong, which was a very low detail ping pong game. Rectangular bar on each side of the screen, little square that bounced between them, a line down the middle to signify the net. It made a sort of electronic bop sound if you successfully hit the square. You could only move the bar, your paddle, up and down. That was it. Simple game, plugged into a cathode ray tube TV to play. No save feature, which we didn't miss because we didn't know. Nothing had save. Pong was not a world changer. I did not go home wishing my parents had the money to buy a Pong machine. Pac-Man. Large, yellow, circular, plastic thing about 30 centimetres across. The actual screen was less than 10 centimetres across. All it did was play Pac-Man. The maze was permanent, it didn't change. Even when the thing was off, the maze was there. The game was a series of lights that went on and off depending on what you were doing and what the machine was doing. When it was turned off, if you held it at the right angle in the right light, you could see that each square was a dot, a ghost, and a Pac-Man. No save, you played till you ran out of lives or your parents turned it off. And if you were on an amazing run with a super high score and it was bedtime or dinner time, too bad. Game over because mum or dad had said turn it off. Game and watch. Did you have one of these or have you seen one of these? They were little rectangles, quite thin, that had an even smaller screen on them, and they ran on watch batteries. Each one played one game. There were basic movement buttons, left or right, and some controls for setting the time because it doubled as a clock. We were given 3 of these, 3 different games, that were bought at a market in Indonesia for the equivalent of $5 Australian. They were much more expensive in Australia, so we got lucky. They were genuine, not knockoffs, just priced for the market they were being sold in. Graphics were simple, but a huge step above Pong, and quite distinctive. Most of the graphics were printed on the screen, and then the active elements were displayed with LCD. One of the games was parachutists jumping out of a plane and you controlled a little person in a boat. Another was catching little stick figures jumping out of a burning building. And I can't remember what the third one was. You could move your little person into one of 3 positions, left, right, or middle. There was no ability to save. You don't miss what you don't know, but you did wish you could keep going. We loved those games. They got played till the LCD faded. It wasn't until I was in uni that my father brought home a second-hand computer. Its display was green on black, which was standard for the time. It was basically for work. But when he was out, I could type my essays on it and print them out on a dot matrix printer. But it had a few games on it. A machine that played more than one game. Revolutionary. And I'm not being sarcastic, it really was. I remember Space Invaders being on there and a couple of other things, but no save. You played till you died or quit. Text adventures were a thing. Either just text or, if it was fancy, static line drawings with text. The one I remember the best was the Robin of Sherwood text adventure, which I played at a friend's house. I remember that one because I knew the TV series back to front, and you had to have really good knowledge of the series to be able to play the game. I was able to help my friend know what to do, but we both spent quite some time puzzling out exactly what we had to type in for the game to recognise the syntax and let us progress. And you could save. Mind-blowing. And necessary. I think we would have been driven mad otherwise. There was one game I used to play at uni late at night while my boyfriend, now my spouse, was working on his PhD. He was doing computer science, so I had access to the server room while he was working. There was one terminal there that I could use, and I played Moria. It's not what you think, although maybe, just maybe, it is. All the graphics were from a QWERTY keyboard. Each mob or object was represented by a different character, like an exclamation mark or an @ or whatever. I think from memory a chest was a question mark, as in what's in there. The goal was to make your way down through the mines of Moria to fight the Balrog at the bottom. It was a series of mazes, black on white, hallelujah, but no save. I never made it all the way down. Simplest of graphics, but utterly compelling. Since then, I have seen so many games come and go, and so many leaps and bounds in gameplay and graphics. When I was first married, my spouse and I would play Might and Magic. It came with a pad of special graph paper so you could map the dungeons, which the instruction book recommended. Back then, games came in a sizable box, had a glossy manual, often maps or extra pictures, and multiple discs. You'd load a game into your computer to install it, and then you'd take that disc out and put in another one for actual play. If the game was really big, you may be asked at different points to put in another disc in order to continue. Star Wars Dark Forces blew our minds because the graphics, which weren't realistic by today's standards, were so much more realistic than what we had seen before. And clever game mechanics heightened that sense of realism. You can go a long way with clever game mechanics. Myst, even though it was static pictures with limited animation, was incredible for the depth of colour and beauty of the images, along with its intriguing puzzles and live-action cutscenes. And the music was, and still is, glorious. I still love Myst, and have played all the sequels. And then Thief came out. The very first-person sneaker. It had mantle. It had lean. These don't sound revolutionary, but remember, someone had to be the first with those. You could also swing on a rope and climb ropes. And you had to take things slowly, be careful, be sneaky. Because Garrett would die otherwise. And there was hidden loot to find and collect, and basically I was in love. I played Thief so much that my dreams would take place in the city. They'd often be weird and unrelated to the game, but with the city as the backdrop. For me, Thief became my gold standard, and I still replay it from time to time, along with its sequels. Although the last one was a bit disappointing. They had inexplicably gotten rid of one of the main factions, and there was this weird ongoing joke about Garrett, the main character, smelling bad. Which is stupid, because he's meant to be the thief that no one detects, but everyone was always going on about his smell and sniffing you out. Super annoying and stupid. Not a Garrett thing. And Red Faction stands out because of the story, but also because I am pretty sure it was the first game with deformable terrain. You were a miner on Mars, so it makes sense that you should be able to mine, dig holes, blow things up. And not just terrain, structures too. I had way too much fun with that game. And the devs had hidden things that you could only find if you got really destructive. Gaming had exploded. There were so many different types: RTS, RPG, shooters, Sims, not the Sims, but things like SimCity and Afterlife, the Anno series, so many more. Sports games, board games, no setup and you could play against the computer. Card games have always been there, although our crappy green on black computer didn't have solitaire. Puzzle games like Fool's Errand and Myst, both made for Mac. Mac was the thing for games because of the graphics capabilities, until some bright spark at Apple decided that that was beneath the company. And then gaming on PC took off. I got into Doom because I was contracted to write a player guide for Doom 3. It was professionally published for national release, and it still sits on my bookshelf. And consoles were always there. Sega, Amiga. We all know how Nintendo has dominated the console market as they have changed and evolved. And don't get me started on PlayStation and Xbox. I've never used an Xbox, but luckily the best games for that either release across multiple platforms or get ported to PC. That's how I got to play Halo on PC. So what is it I like in a game? Foremost, it's story. There are games I haven't bothered with because I am not interested in the story. Gameplay also figures in there. There are things I've tried once and said, never again. I do not do RTS, too stressful. I don't do Sims. I don't do The Sims. Although I'm a sucker for Power Wash Simulator. It has a very relaxing gameplay and a surprisingly detailed storyline. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I don't like isometric. First person is favourite for immersion. Third person has to be something special. Like Horizon. That's special. Love it to bits. Also, if there's stuff to collect, objects to find, I am happy as a pig in mud and will keep going with a level until I get everything. Humour's important. Sometimes you just want to have fun. So the Lego games, from Rock Raiders through to Lego Horizon. But not Skywalker Saga. They somehow dropped the ball with that one. Dull. Ratchet and Clank, Jack and Daxter, thank goodness you're here. But what's my favouriteest game of all time? For a long time I thought it would always be Thief, but then something else came along and took that top spot. And you're looking at it. You play it. It's Minecraft. Why? That's a discussion for another day. So tell me, what was your first game? What game or games do you love and why? What don't you like? Tell me about your video game journey. There are so many different paths we can take, but we're all in this together.